If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch you won't. If you think you'll lose, you lost. For out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all a state of mind. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the one who thinks he can.
In the unpredictable world of big league sports, how do you figure it? Who's got the power? The story of the 90s, the big upset. October 1990, the Oakland A's, heavy favorites, to defeat the Cincinnati Reds in the World Series. But the defending champs are swept in 4 and lose the final game on their home field. Across the bay, the 49ers looking for a record third straight Super Bowl. But a fumble late in the NFC Championship game gave the New York Giants new life. And this field goal ended the Niners' three-peat attempt. 7 weeks ago today, top-ranked, unbeaten, defending champ UNLV upset by Duke in the NCAA semifinals at the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis. But remember, that string of upsets started just a few miles from the Hoosier Dome at Indianapolis Motor Speedway with Arie Luyendyk's surprise win in last year's Indy 500. The question remains, who's got the power? Qualifying continues for the most unpredictable game of all, the Indy 500. ESPN, the world leader in motorsports coverage, presents Speed World. The picture is live from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. A big crowd on hand for this, the third day of qualifying for the Indy 500. You see the overcast skies in the background. This has been a cool and cloudy day throughout. 65 degrees, our current temperature. Big story perhaps down there at the bottom. Chance of rain today and continuing in tomorrow, somewhere around 60%. All of this for the second weekend of qualifying. We welcome you. I'm Dave Despain, and it's a pleasure to join you for ESPN's exclusive coverage of this, the third day of time trials for the Diamond Anniversary, the 75th running of the Indy 500. And I think we can sum up our story this weekend in 2 words: heroes and hopefuls. The hopefuls are those who have still not qualified for this race, and for them, the emotional roller coaster continues this weekend. All they know for sure is that it will end, win or lose, tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock when this racetrack closes. But as we look out across this track, our minds are still filled with the memories of last weekend, pole weekend. And what a weekend it was, of dramatic performances and heartwarming stories. A weekend for heroes like Rick Mears, who went out in the heat of the day, ran 2:24, and claimed a record 6th pole. A.J. Foyt, his legs and feet still throbbing from that bone-crushing crash. 200,000 fans on their feet as he roared to the middle of row 1. And Mario Andretti, another of the all-time greats plagued by so much bad luck here over the years, leading the family charge to the outside of row 1. Talk about a front row, amazing statistics. 74 Indy starts, 8 wins, 18 500-mile race wins in total. They've started 166 500-mile races and 866 races all told. Truly amazing. Heroes are those who gamble, and many gambled last weekend on the weather and came out as losers. Take a look, if you will, at row 5. Gary Bettenhausen, one day too late for the pole, fastest man in the field, 30 years to the day after his father was killed here. Arie Luyendyk, the defending race champ, gambled on Saturday, qualified on Sunday. He's stuck in 14th. And Emerson Fittipaldi, whose owner, Roger Penske, waved off a speed that would have put him in the middle of row 1. He didn't get a second chance. Another hero back there in row 5. And so with that, we come to this, the second weekend of the weekend for the hopefuls, for the rookies and for the veterans, for those who have not yet made the field. The pole is gone. The front row is not even so much as a hope. And yet there is still that hope to simply make the field, to qualify. And that in itself would be a great victory for drivers who have interesting stories. Consider some of these drivers. For example, Hiro Matsushita, who gets a bad rap as a guy who bought his way to Indianapolis, and yet he has steadily climbed up the speed ladder well into the realm of respectability. And there is, too, the story of Willie Ribbs, hoping to be the first black driver in the 500, still trying today, despite an amazing string of budget-busting engine problems. There is John Paul Jr. His dream is to regain the success that slipped away due to an error in his personal life, an error that took quite a toll. And how about Roberto Guerrero? He fell from the IndyCar racing privileged upper class to the ranks of the unemployed, but now he's back in a car. Scott Pruitt, a comeback from injury every bit as heroic as that of A.J. Foyt. His hope to qualify an All-American car. And the 83 winner, Tom Sneva, a man who simply admits that his hope for the month of May is just to be in the big race and spend Memorial Day at this racetrack instead of out on the golf course. So those are some of the hopefuls whose stories we're going to review here today. 10 drivers have made qualifying attempts. 7 have actually qualified. Johnny Parsons Jr., Dominic Dobson, and Randy Lewis have made attempts but waved them off. Now let's call in a man who was lured here from Dublin, Ireland by the appeal of IndyCar racing, made his mark on this sport, and doggone if he didn't take root over in Noblesville, Indiana. He is our resident expert on IndyCar racing. Derek Daly, I'm surprised by the fact that we've had perfect conditions here today for qualifying, and yet we've still got 4 spots left in the field. What's going on?
Well, weather conditions really have been the focal point really since last Saturday because it was very hot and humid. Nobody really wanted to run in the middle of the day because the times are not as fast. Now it's perfect conditions. What that means is it's overcast, the air is dense, it creates more downforce, which makes the cars faster. Also, engines like nice, cool air that make more horsepower. That makes you run faster. But today, the 4 spots we have left open, and that's what we have now, the drivers that are in line that can possibly fill these spots are flirting with speeds that they're not confident will keep them in the race. So they're buying time, they're gambling again. But if you buy time, which means buy practice time, because you can run during the day, you can call a qualification attempt at any time. What if it rains? Then the gamble doesn't pay off. We saw a gamble fail last weekend. What if it rains tomorrow or later today?
And that, of course, is the forecast. You saw that 60% chance of rain for the remainder of today, and it's not a whole lot more optimistic for tomorrow. So it is indeed a gambling game and a guessing game, and sometimes the gamble doesn't pay off. I want to take you back to practice this morning, and we'll take a look at a breaking story here. This was 9:15 this morning, Indy time. Dean Hall out searching for speed and paying the price up in turn 4 as the car got away from him.
This was 15 minutes after the green light went on this morning for practice. Dean Hall was not running very quickly at the time, got very low under the white line at turn 4. We saw 2 big crashes earlier in the month at turn 4, but you see him hit that outside retaining wall very, very hard. And look at the wheel, the front wheel rolling down the track. That's Didier Thays, turns left to avoid it, then realizes he's about to hit Dean Hall. He swerves to the right, does a zigzag, misses it as Dean Hall goes on and hits the inside wall like we've seen 2 cars do earlier on this month.
Well, Didier did a fair piece of driving to avoid that problem and came out of it okay. We'll have an update on Dean Hall's situation in just a moment. Let me first tell you that those cars you hear running behind us now are practicing. As Derek explained, the track is open for practice throughout the day today. Anytime one of these remaining hopefuls wants to make a qualifying attempt, he simply moves into line. The track is closed and inspected, and he is then sent on his way to either glory or additional frustration. Let's bring in Dr. Jerry Punch now, one of the 2 men who will patrol pit road for us here today, and see if we can get an update on the Dean Hall situation. Jerry?
Well, Dave, thank you very much. We checked moments ago, and Dean Hall, after that violent impact, or twice he hit the wall here earlier this morning, is taken to the Infield Care Center, the Hanna Emergency Medical Center, where he was checked out by Dr. Bach, and from there he was transported down to Methodist Hospital of Indianapolis. Now, he underwent x-rays down there. He was complaining of some pain in the left knee. They determined by x-ray that he had an injury, most of a contusion or bruising of the left knee, but he has a chip fracture of the right lower leg. He will be admitted and kept there overnight for observation. Now, the good news for Dean Hall in trying to make his second ever attempt at Indianapolis is that he left. He will probably be able to be discharged in the morning, and of course,
We've had a crash on the racetrack. This shot is live, and this was during practice. It happened just this moment. The car has come to a stop. Ted Prappus has crashed on the racetrack during this practice session that runs through the period of our qualifying today. And as you can see, Prapus at this moment is climbing out of the car. Another young man who has certainly had his struggles here at Indianapolis this week and throughout the month, indeed, as he has gone looking for the speed that he hoped would put him into the field. Ted Prapus, a rookie here, the PIG Racing entry, number 31. That's an 89 Lola with a Judd engine. And as you can see, he has strung a fair amount of debris along the front straightaway. But again, the key story and the key issue here is Prapus' condition, and it appears that he is fine. He climbed out quickly. We see the safety crews there instantly. If there is any track crew in the country, I think that deserves our accolades for their work, it is the guys here at Indy. They are on the scene almost before the car stopped. There's the wing off that car that has actually cleared the fence and landed in the little grassy median outside the racetrack. And Prapus' car has come to a halt. The crews are there. Again, the frustration, I think, Derek, of that search for speed. Desperation begins to set in somewhere about the middle of day 3 qualifying.
It really did, and does. And 2:10 was the fastest Prapus had done. We see him sit on the end of the pit wall here being tended to by one of the doctors. But 2:10 was his speed. About an hour ago, he pushed that up to 2:12. But this is a very bad situation. That car for sure is history. Their month is over. We saw Ted Prapus last week on the show last week crash at turn 1. This is turn 4. We only just stopped talking about turn 4 where Dean Hall had his incident, but we see the car there, very, very heavy damage. Turn 4 has claimed a lot of cars this month, and Ted Prapus is another one that goes down as a statistic. Unfortunately, I think he's back to California.
Prapus, sixth-place finisher out at Long Beach, a very promising IndyCar driver of the future, but this month has certainly held no promise for Ted. He has hit the wall at turn 4. It's been the bugaboo this month. He is okay, and that picture is live from Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we are working our way through the third day of qualifying for the 75th running of the Indy 500. This will keep the track obviously under yellow for some time while they clean up the debris. Yes, we will be recapping all of the qualifying runs here. Derek alluded to 2:10. Right now, you need about 2:13 to get into the field. And Marty, we had a bit of an interruption there. Let's go ahead and get to the fourth member of our team here. Last but certainly not least, and Ted Prapus bringing about the delay here as we go now trackside to Marty Reed. Marty, what can you update us with?
Well, Ted's situation was more important than mine anyway, but interestingly enough, Johnny Parsons just walked by. He waved off in an attempt earlier today at 2:12. Now, the way things are going, I asked him as he went by, I said, don't you think you should have taken that 2:12? He says, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. And he looks skyward. He's worried about the weather. The other key member of the group of the latecomers is Gordon Johncock. Now, they are back in the paddock area. They have changed motors. The fastest he has been as 2:10. So they are seriously thrashing, getting great straightaway speed, about 2:23, 2:24, but it's really laying down in the corner. So they got a lot of dialing in to get into that car and get it into the show. Guys?
Gordon Johncock, of course, one of the big names of this sport who came here hoping to come up with a ride and indeed did at the 11th hour. He is not the only one. We have alluded to Sneva. There are others in that same situation, and we'll be getting all of their stories in during the course of the day. The drivers who are still expected to make qualifying runs, Johnny Parsons Jr., you just heard about him waving off the 2:12. Poncho Carter, Willie T. Ribbs, a saga for that team. They've been out again today and back. Ted Prapus, who has just crashed, and Guido Dacco, still expected to make qualifying attempts here today. Dominic Dobson, who says the parts of his car that he needs to drive the car still work fine, the point being that he has broken a bone in his left leg in a crash last weekend. Salt Walther, whose car caught fire on him again here this week. Randy Lewis, Johncock we talked about, and Dean Hall, who hit the fence this morning. So that is the rundown of the drivers that we expect to see on the Speedway during the course of the afternoon. We'll recap everything that has happened up until now on our qualifying report. Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the yellow lights flashing off turn 4 indicating the crash of Ted Prapus here just moments ago. Prapus is okay. If you have just joined us, it is the third day of qualifying for the 500. See the big crowd over there on the right looking on as we go back and take a look at what happened to Ted Prapus in turn 4.
This is turn 4. He loses it right in the middle. He's just oversteer. It's all lost now. He was in the groove, hits very hard. Look at the rear wing. Look at that wing fly off the car. Very, very hard hit for Ted Prapus. Look at that rear wing up over the fence. Up over the fence. That's why you don't see spectator grandstands within that 20 feet area there of the turn. But Ted Prappas, a very hard hit. He did blow an engine. Oh, we see the car there. Look at the nose cone damage of that car. Lucky he doesn't have foot injuries.
But this is precisely what these cars are designed to do. They're supposed to end up all smashed up like that.
That's right. They absorb the impact and dissipate the energy all through the car.
And we see the car being hauled away, and again, the good news, Prappas actually climbed out of that wreck under his own power and appeared to be uninjured. Perhaps we'll get more on that now as we go trackside once again. Dr. Jerry Punch.
Well, Dave, once again, it is good news for Ted Prappas. Of course, last week we came on the air with a similar situation. The young man trying to get in the field here. We talked to Norm Turley, his car owner, very disappointed when the car contacted the wall in turn 2. And again, this week, an identical problem, this time up in turn 4. And I talked to Norm Turley just moments ago as he was on his way to the infield hospital. He said Ted had climbed out of the car, as we all saw. He spoke with Ted and said Ted said he felt okay. He was going to go get checked out for the obligatory exam here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As to what happened with the car, Ted really wasn't sure. He didn't know what to say yet until he could gather his thoughts a little bit. Maybe we'll find out a little later on. But fortunately, and most importantly, the driver is okay.
Well, the trail of rubber tells the tale as Prappas' ride ended right there off the exit of turn 4, where several rookies have come to a bad end here during the course of this week. One of those, Mark Dismore, continues to recover nicely in a hospital here, and we're going to recap his story a little later. I think what we should do, for the benefit of you who may have been vacationing on a sufficiently remote Pacific island that you don't really know what's happened up till now, let's go back and recap the field for the Indy 500, and keep in mind that the majority of this field locked in their positions last weekend. We talked about Mears, Foyt, and Andretti. An amazing front row for this Diamond Jubilee 500. In the second row, we have Bobby Rahal, Michael Andretti, the second of 4 Andrettis to make the race, and Al Unser Jr., the kart champion who continues to simply have bad luck when it comes to qualifying here at Indy. He'll start 6th outside row 2. We go on back and pick up row 3, and yeah, there's another Andretti. That is John. He is inside row 3. Jim Crawford, some considered the pre-race favorite to take the pole in that fast Buick. Didn't run as well as he expected. And Danny Sullivan has really struggled all month to get the Alfa up to speed. That is a development ride, I think it's fair to say at this point. Sullivan put it in 9th starting spot at a respectable 2:18. Back in row 4, is there another Andretti? Indeed there is. Jeff, the youngest son of Mario, in the middle. Eddie Cheever and Scott Goodyear flank him as you see the speeds begin to fall off. Cheever ran 2:18 after trying twice when it was hot. Goodyear down to 2:16. On back to row 5, and this was the Sunday row when Gary Bettenhausen turned the fastest laps in qualifying thus far. Lyondike, the defending champion, took the middle, and Fittipaldi, who twice played the gambling game on Saturday, lost both times, ran 2:23, but it's only good enough for the outside of row 5. We come on back to row 6. Again, these are last Sunday's qualifiers. Kevin Cogan, another huge disappointment. He had run 2:26 in practice, qualified at 2:22. Stan Fox was all smiles at 2:19, and Mike Groff checked in at 2:19 also to round out the 6th row. That's 18th starting spot. 7th row will be occupied by Scott Brayton, who has campaigned the Buicks here for many years. Tony Bettenhausen carries on a family tradition in the middle of row 7. And Bernard Jourdain, with the help of A.J. Foyt's excellent team, qualifies at 2:16 to put him outside the 7th row. The final qualifier last Sunday was Jeff Brabham at 2:14. And until late today, that was the slowest speed. Buddy Lazier earlier today went out and uncorked a great 4-lap run at 2:18. You'll see that. And Hiro Matsushita, whom we've talked about, is no longer the brunt of Speedway jokes after he ran 2:18 to claim the outside of row 8. Now, these are drivers who qualified this afternoon. John Paul Jr., Taro Palmroth, and Scott Pruitt are in the show in row 9, and each of them a story. And thus far, we've filled 2 spots in row 10 with a couple of big names. Roberto Guerrero and Tom Sneva bring us now to a total of 29 drivers who have qualified for the field. That means we have 4 spots still remaining, and we'll come back to tell you about how some of those guys got in and who might get the 4 spots that are left as we continue our coverage of Indy Time Trials.
Speedway here, the 75th anniversary of the famed greatest spectacle in racing, and there are a number of drivers yet to qualify. One of those car owners standing with me with his hopeful driver just on his way back to pit road is Dale Coyne. And Dale, you lost a car a week ago today in qualifying, a tough break for you, but you guys have bounced back with Randy Lewis. What's the status right now? When will he be able to make his next run?
Well, we waved off an 11.4 this morning, and the weather being what it is, we lost an engine this afternoon. So we're getting it back out here now. They should be out in about 10 minutes, and we're trying to get a little bit of green light time and then try to get it in before 6 o'clock.
There has to be a lot of concern about the weather tomorrow. This has to be pretty much ideal with the cool temperatures and minimal wind.
Yeah, this is perfect, and I think I'd almost rather post a time and let everybody shoot at that tomorrow, and if it rains out, we're safe. So it's a gamble. If I knew what to do, I'd be in Vegas. I wouldn't be here.
A gambler, Dale Coyne, here, car owner, of course. Last year, Dean Hall drove his car in the field, and this year, hopefully, Randy Lewis will get that car qualified in just a few minutes. Dave?
And Dale Coyne speaking to precisely the issue that you raised, Derek. We look here at Salt Walther's car, and everybody remembers that horrifying ride down the front straightaway that he took back in 1973 in a ball of fire. He's still back here at the Speedway and hoping to get up to speed. More about the weather. Now, Coyne says he would prefer to post a time and take his chances, which is a little different from what you talked about. Here's Hiro Matsushita, and Hiro has really been a hero here this week. It's no secret that this young man has taken an awful lot of raps. His grandfather owns Panasonic, or founded Panasonic, actually, and Hiro's very proud of that, obviously. Point is that money is no object for this young man. Speed was a big problem coming in. No experience and good equipment, but it takes more than just good equipment to go around this place fast. But he has really earned the respect of these people.
He really has. He came here with plenty of good equipment. He had two cars. One was a Cosworth car and one was a Buick car, and for a rookie to actually have two cars like that with totally different engines can be a problem sometimes, because you can get mixed up in what you like with one car, what you like with another. But Dick Simon eventually put him into the Buick, said, look, this is the one that's going to go faster, stick with this one, which is what he did, and really I think surprised a lot of people with the speed he came up with.
2:18 for Matsushita to put him well into this field. We'll see his qualifying run a little later. Right now I think we're going to go back and take a look at I believe the first driver out today. It was John Paul Jr. who kicked off our third day qualifying, and here he is on the racetrack en route to a speed that put him, for the moment, in row 9. We'll get into the whole issue of how you can get bumped out of this field a little later, but right now as we watch Paul scorching along to a first lap, but second lap at 2:17, an average of 2:17, good consistency there.
One of the smallest teams here, MAN Motorsports, based locally here in Indianapolis. This is the only race they do. They run a Buick engine because they say it's cheaper and faster, just like we heard Derek Walker say earlier in the month. But a very good run by John Paul, who, as you say, and you said earlier, has seen his fair share of personal problems.
Well, and we make no secret about what has happened to this young man. He was one of the great, promising young racing stars of the late 80s. His father was convicted of drug smuggling. The son was involved in the ring, and he was convicted. And he did his time and paid his dues and came out and said, if anybody will have me, I still want to drive race cars. And now he has found a ride and really came up with a lot of speed for this qualifying attempt that they had not had prior. His top speed was 2:16. He got it well into the show at 2:17.9, almost 2:18, and he was a very happy man as he climbed out of that car today, knowing that he has now the opportunity to get back into the Indy 500 and perhaps start rebuilding his racing career now that he's rebuilt his life.
Again, we just saw the graphic on the right side. That's the speed at turn 4 that you saw him come off, 212 miles an hour in turn 4. But of course, the interesting one for the Buick people is the straight line speed. John Paul, in fact, look, puts his right hand up, says, realizes that he's done it, he's made it successfully, and it's just a little personal cheer for himself there.
Here you see the consistency. Uncorked a big one on the third lap at 2:18.6, almost a mile an hour faster than his other 3 laps, averaged almost 2:18. John Paul Jr. in the field for the moment, occupying the inside of row 9. That would be 25th starting spot in the field, further back than he would like, but nonetheless, as we said, he was very happy as we met him after the run.
Here at the Speedway.
Yeah, as fast as I've ever been here. And it was a fantastic run, it really was. A lot of effort went into it, all the team, they put in tremendous hours, and it's really paid off.
Track conditions. Lap 3 was your fastest at over 2:18. How was it out there?
It was really good. I was a little bit high coming off before that lap, and I just wanted to play it safe the last lap. It was a little slower, but it's still fantastic.
How much weight is off those shoulders right now?
Oh, a tremendous amount. I don't know if I can do 20 more years of these days. It really is a pressure situation.
Good to see him on the road back as he has earned his starting spot here. We're going to take a look at Roberto Guerrero's run here in just a moment as we again see the crowd. I think we're going to be able at this moment, though, to check in on another driver who's been through this turn 4 crash situation and managed to walk, albeit with a limp, away and come back still hoping to qualify for this race. Let's go back once again to Dr. Jerry Punch. Jerry?
Well, Dave, 33-year-old Lake Tahoe resident Dominic Dobson back this week. And Dominic, a little different than what we saw you last Saturday. We were talking in a golf cart and you were laid up with a long leg splint, and now it's a little bit of carbon fiber on the left leg. And first of all, how are you feeling?
Jerry, I'm feeling much better. I really have. Dr. Trammell and the group built me up a little brace, and the parts I need to drive a race car is fine. So my left leg just sits there, and the only time I use it is to get in and out of the pit. So I'm doing all right.
Now, broken bones aside, you have been back in a car that you acquired, the team acquired from True Sports, another 1989 Lola, and you made an attempt this morning.
That's right. The Burns Racing team really worked hard, and I want to thank them because they really busted their tails to get a new car ready. And so we have a new 89 Lola Kroger Coors car that we made an attempt to get in the field with this morning, and had to wave it off. We just weren't really up to the speed that we thought we were going to need, and so we've just been practicing that this afternoon.
So you lost an engine a little bit ago. You will not be able to qualify today. You will probably have to go, tomorrow on Bubble Day?
Yeah, it's just been, one thing after another, and I feel bad because it's our second engine that's gone, and of course we had the crash, and the guy's just been working hard. So they're going to change the engine tonight. We've got a race motor, and hopefully tomorrow we get out and get this thing done and get the car in the field.
We'll be watching tomorrow as Dominic Dobson tries to make it into this Indy 500 field. Let's go further up pit road to Marty Reed.
Well, thanks, Jerry. Alongside is Johnny Parsons. You earlier waved off 212, and want to ask you, what theory do you go by? I mean, do you sit there and put the car in the show and let somebody shoot at you, or are you going to sit back and wait?
No, we're going to sit back and follow the command of our car owner, Ralph Wilkie, and we don't want to be the target speed. It's not sure, what some guys are going to get it up here late, and we're real borderline with like 3 or 4 other cars, so we're going to wait a little bit and see what happens.
Weather's starting to become a factor. You're going to try and get back out and practice one more time, and if it comes together, then you'll make a run?
The weather's always a factor here, Marty. You know that at the Speedway and qualifying, and yeah, we tried a little tweak here. We're real close, and made a minor change. It might make a difference for a half a mile an hour, and we're looking at target speed right now. Tom Sneva's 213.1. If we can get 4 laps over that, we'll be in line.
There you have it from Johnny Parsons as they wait to make their shot.
Parsons, the very versatile driver, as we take a look at last year's winner of the race, Arie Luyendyk, in deep consultation here with here's the team that he's consulting with. Their car is out on the racetrack, and that, of course, is Emerson Fittipaldi, winner here 2 years ago, and perhaps the consummate driver. I don't think that's Fittipaldi's helmet. What's going on here, Dan?
That is Rick Mears' helmet. You never know with Rick because he changes as the sponsor's colors change, which is an unusual situation because I like to see drivers maintain their identity. But Mears, that is Mears in one of the T cars.
Wouldn't it be wonderful to be Roger Penske? And if you need somebody to go out and shake down the 2 year ago winner's car, send out Rick Mears, the pole sitter. We're going to come back with Roberto Guerrero's run, a whole lot more of what has happened today and is still to come at Indy. Guerrero run as we go to videotape from earlier today and pick up the last lap for the man who came here in 1984 as a rookie and finished second. You talked about accomplished rookies, but a guy who really had to struggle to get a ride here. That's been his story.
He really had. There was a very bitter parting of the ways between Alfa Romeo, the Patrick team, and Roberto, and really there was it's no secret there was a lawsuit brought by Roberto against the team. So really I was one of the most surprised people to see that they had actually worked out their differences, and Roberto got into this car very late, only 2 days ago. He's since blown 2 engines, so he has had his mechanical problems also, but Guerrero has been above 216, was in practice, and did qualify quite easily.
And so as we watch him come down to take the checkered flag, Guerrero's speed at 214 and a very small change. And he is, a quick review, he would be the next to slowest qualifier thus far, but I think that is more a commentary on the mechanical problem perhaps than anything else. The average there at 214.027, if memory serves, he had actually lapped up around 216 before they began to have the mechanical problems. It is good to see the team troubles resolved and see Roberto Guerrero back in a car, and in typical fashion, he was smiling when it was all over.
Roberto, yesterday in practice you were able to get 216.9, but in qualifying here about 214 and some change. What was the difference?
Well, first we probably got a little bit of a toe to do those, and on our own we basically, it's completely wide open at 214. So the only good thing is that the chassis feels very, very comfortable, and then we'll just have to hope that we can finish the race and see what we can do.
Obviously, 7 days ago, you didn't even have a ride, so getting ready in 1 week has been a real challenge. Will you be able to make some more horsepower in 1 more week to race day?
Well, I mean, we'll just have to, leave that to Alfa Romeo. They've been working at it for very long. So, as I said, I'm happy to be in the race, and then hopefully we can do well in the race.
Like I said, always smiling. We go to Scott Pruitt's run from earlier today. By the way, Alfa's problem all month has been straightaway speed. Danny Sullivan can't make his Alfa go all that fast either. Pruitt, the comeback story here, the bad crash at West Palm that left him so badly injured with the leg and ankle fractures, and the battle back, and the attempt to qualify an All-American car, Derek. Those are the key stories.
The All-American car built by True Sports, and really this has been the All-American struggle, because all month long here, Pruitt has not been able to get the type of speed that he really wants. In the first week alone, he blew 5 engines, and they have a very unique transmission in this car, a transverse gearbox. They broke one of those. His teammate is Jeff Brabham. Jeff, although he has been a little bit slow, has had no mechanical problems, but really this car does not have enough horsepower to make these drivers attain the type of speed that they are capable of.
The engine, of course, is a Judd. It was originally derived from a Honda, but it is now an American-built engine. They have built a chassis to accommodate it. Steve Horn, who runs the team, says that if American can put a man on the moon, we ought to be able to build an Indy car, and he may be regretting now that he's made that attempt. But in realistic terms, and I think in fairness to the team, you always have teething problems with a new design.
Well, that's correct. And Steve Horn, the road he has taken, he maintains that if you buy a Lola, you can only go as fast as the Lolas. If you have a Chevrolet, you can go as fast as the Chevrolets. But can he beat Penske's Chevrolets? He thinks he has to go his own route. Then he can try and get the unfair advantage that he thinks people like Penske has had over the years, which he probably has. So that's the road Steve Horn has taken, but it's a very rocky and difficult road.
Innovation and competition, always the stories here at Indy. Their average speed, 2:14.8, didn't set the world on fire, but put him in the show. And here's what Scott Pruitt had to say afterward.
Talk about a serious month for thrashing. You guys have definitely had it.
Well, it's been real tough on the whole team, but they've been at it all the time. I mean, changing a lot of engines, working on a lot of pieces. Everybody's been right there. True Sports and Budweiser, and everybody's been right there. Encouraging us along the way. And when the chips are down, that really is going to bring a team together. And finally, it's starting to come together.
I'm sure you are aware all the talk that's been going on. Budweiser, of course, in the last year of their contract, people start talking if this team doesn't do well here. That's got to add a ton of pressure to you and the crew.
Well, for me personally, Budweiser's always been great. I mean, they say they don't put any pressure on me, no more than what I do myself. But they've always been there and been very supportive, and I'm pretty proud to be a part of their family.
And whatever else happens with that team this year, it's good to see Scott Pruitt back in a race car after the injuries that he sustained last year. The crowd look on and await the reopening of the racetrack for perhaps qualifying attempts still to come. We have 4 spots left in the Indy 500. Warner Trophy that at the end of the Indy 500 will carry the name of the 1991 winner. Right now, I guess, for a lot of these guys, that seems like a very, very distant dream. But, of course, that is still the dream, to get into this field, to have an opportunity to go out on Memorial Day and run for that trophy, which now carries the names of 74 previous winners, including last year's champion, Arie Luyendyk. I think we're going to get an opportunity to hear from him now as he sits squarely in the middle of row 5. There's the handsome face. Let's go down and hear what he has to say.
Well, thanks, Dave. Arie, in the comfortable position of being able to lounge around the track this weekend, watching everything. One question, the weather conditions obviously better. If you were running today, everybody always likes to speculate, what kind of speeds could you generate?
These are perfect conditions, and I think we could run 225 or 26 on our own. That's how good the conditions are right now. But all the top teams have qualified, and the smaller teams that are qualifying right now, they can't get to those speeds.
As far as what strategy you try and do as far as relaxation, the month of May really gets to the drivers at this point, doesn't it? I mean, it's almost like, golly, please, race day, come.
Well, we still have more than a week to go, and I can't really wait until I can get back into the car again. So tomorrow we're going to shake my car down. They're preparing the race car right now, and it's going to be a long week because I'm ready to race right now.
Is there any way or any chance that the edge would be lost by race day, or is that just unconscionable?
No, I don't think we'll lose the engine in a week time. We've been running here quite a few laps, and we've been running very good. The RCA car is handling really well on full tanks and also on all kinds of different race situations we simulated. And right now I'm just cheering my friend Didier Thys on here. I hope he can qualify today.
Let me put you on the spot. Watching everybody practicing this week that's already established in the show, who was most impressive to you?
There's a few. I think Emerson and Rick are going to be fast again, and Bobby Rahal and Al Unser Jr. I think they haven't shown us everything yet. I don't take any of these guys for granted because come race day, it usually doesn't turn out the way that you think it will turn out.
Well, Dave, I don't think Arie Luyendyk has showed us everything either.
Arie Luyendyk, of course, a Dutchman. Tero Palmroth, probably the best IndyCar driver that Finland has ever produced. Would I get any argument on that, Derek?
No, yeah, definitely the only guy. Keke Rosberg was the only Finnish driver I knew, but look how low he goes at turn 2. Right down, almost sticks a wheel in on the grass, using every bit of racetrack that's available, as we see a second lap time above 215.
Let's reset the fact that this is taped from earlier today. Tero has actually just been out on the racetrack in reality in real time practicing, but this was earlier today. This was qualifying, and this was a wild ride. This guy really hung it out.
Turn 3, we see the graphic on the right side there, 213. That means his speed through that turn was 213, and he dropped off a little bit of speed down to 211 as he came through turn 4. Of course, then he accelerates down the front stretch, which brings that average speed up a little bit.
The key, of course, is a 4-lap run here, and man, he is using it all the way down to the grass, all the way up to the wall. I'm not sure I'd want to share the cockpit on a ride like that. Is that a driver who is struggling? Is that a driver who knows this is my shot at doing it? I'm going to hang it out. I'm going to take more chances now than I would all month.
I think it's a driver hanging it out, taking the last chance, but it also shows a confidence that the driver has in the car, because when a car doesn't feel stable, when you're uncomfortable, you don't dare go as close to the walls as we see Tero Palmroth as he takes the checkered flag. But he's an unusual situation here because he hardly races during the year, but he gathers up enough sponsorship to go to Dick Simon and say, hey, I want to come to the biggest event in the world, and he comes back and qualifies at Indy and does a very, very good job.
Palmroth has put it in the show at 2:15.6, and that puts him in the middle of row 9. And when it was all over, we had the opportunity to talk to him and find out if that ride was as wild as it looked.
Tero, 3 of your 4 laps quicker than any time prior in the month of May. Any particular reason why?
Well, I really am honest. I don't know why. I have been working, I think, very hard with the car last week. I mean this week and also this morning, and I couldn't get it over 210. We made a few changes for the car before qualifying, and I think that was really the key thing to go so well now.
In turn 2, you went so far under the line. I mean, it looked like you were almost on the grass getting ready to give it a cut. How close was it for you?
Well, I used to cut grass of my grandfather's, place, so I'm used to that. So, but I didn't want to go too much there. But I wanted to go really low because I wanted to be flat there. I knew that if I must be flat there, so I had a little push, and so I needed to take the whole racetrack. And next lap I softened my front bar so I could make my 4th lap again faster. But then I had a little push, so I had to go really use all the racetrack.
A little push, and I think he handled it very, very well. He's in the show. Palmroth at 2:15.6. This is the scene live at Indianapolis as we work our way through the 3rd day of qualifying for the race. And again, the surprise, the fact that we still have 4 spots remaining to be filled today. And the slowest speed, 2:13.189. Tom Sneva, is he in serious trouble here?
I would say he may be looking at the rest of the cars very carefully, because Arie Luyendyk mentioned it again. The conditions are perfect. They really have never been better for qualifying. So the last hour is really when people begin to show their hand, I think, a little bit.
On practice days, they call it happy hour here at the Speedway. When the weather cools down on a sunny day, the shadows fall across the racetrack. That makes it faster. Today it has been overcast throughout, but we anticipate that we may very well see some people out between 5 and 6. Take a look at our trap speed summary here. Matsushita has been the fastest today at 2:24 on the backstretch. John Paul Jr. quickest in turn 1 at 2:13, and over on the north chute again, Matsushita 2:18. Now that's the little short chute between the corners, and that's packing the mail through there pretty well. So Hero has been a hero here today. We'll be back with more live from Indy after this. Indianapolis Motor Speedway on an overcast and gloomy Saturday afternoon. The quest for speed continues. Rick Mears is out practicing on the racetrack. He the pole sitter here, as you see, that number 3 at the top of the scoring pylon and the top of the scoring tower. A.J. Foyt's number 14 in the middle, and on the racetrack, Willie Ribbs. And what a story this man has been. This was at 2:15 this afternoon. A man trying to be the first black driver ever to make the field, but this has been the story of his month, limping along the backstretch with a mechanical problem.
We mentioned earlier Scott Pruitt, the All-American struggle. Maybe we spoke too soon. Maybe this here is the All-American struggle, because Willie T. Ribbs has really climbed monumental heights to try and get this car in the race. They have a Buick engine that changed from a Cosworth because the Buick was cheaper and faster, but this engine has blown up way too many times.
3 at last count, 1 of them twice. This was not a blown motor. It turned out to be less serious than that, but it did damage the qualifying attempt. We're going to go down to Marty Reed now and find out this he had to say at the time.
Willie, heard the motor sort of slow down going into turn 1 on the second warm-up lap. What happened?
I don't know. A broken header or a valve spring or something. The thing just died.
But you didn't cook the motor. You still got a chance to get into this, right?
I hope so. We're going to look at it now, but I don't know why it just fell off the way it did and just boom, no power.
This has been a roller coaster for you yesterday and now today.
It's the way life is in this business sometimes. We'll be all right.
We'll be all right. Now, again, that was taped earlier today, just after he came in off the racetrack. Ribbs with another unsuccessful attempt due to mechanical woes. But we can update that story now as we go to the garage area and join Willie live.
Well, Dave, Willie will be all right. In fact, the crew back here huddling with him just moments ago. And Willie, although you have had some gremlins in the engines these past few weeks, you have been gaining on it steadily every time you go out.
No, we haven't had gremlins. We've had monsters. I mean, we've had an engine go on us, and it's been hurting us. But Buick has been helping us out in this problem. And, you know, every day we're making progress, but you need to continue your momentum. I mean, you don't want to go 20 laps or 25 laps, and when you start getting a rhythm and momentum with chassis development, then you lose it, you know, with an engine problem. So tomorrow's another day, and just get ready to go do it again.
Your comfort level has to be growing in the car. Your laps just a little while ago, as we showed, over 215 miles an hour. You've come a long way just in about 8 or 9 days. What's been the most difficult learning curve here at Indianapolis? What's been the toughest thing to try to grasp here to get those quick laps?
As soon as you get them, stopping and getting an engine changed and then starting all over again. You know, once the car's working, and I got good people with Derek Walker and Tim Wardrop and a great crew. So Tim can go right to a problem. And I mean, this morning we were struggling around 210, 211, and we're scratching on it. We haven't changed a thing. And then we found out we just had a bad set of tires. And as soon as we strapped tires on, we got going straight away 215. You know, you run into problems like that, and they can identify them and solve them. And that's what you got to have.
Now, Bill Cosby is the fellow who actually gave you a shot to come up here, along with the hard work of Derek Walker and the crew. How much has Cos had as far as input? He hasn't been here physically, but do you talk to him?
Well, we've been getting Jell-O sent to us every day, and he does his daily phone call. You know, it's like getting a call from the top, and we give him a report, and then he's watching TV as well to see what's happening. So he's continuing to make the money so we can keep racing.
Hey, Cos, if you're watching, make more money. This guy wants to race, and he's going to be a great one. Back upstairs.
Kaz, I think you better be watching over your shoulder. If that guy put his mind to it, he'd make a great comedian. Here are the rookies in the field and the men that Willie Ribbs hopes to join. Jeff Andretti, Mike Groff, Hiro Matsushita, whom we'll see qualifying in a moment, and Buddy Lazier, who uncorked a good one here earlier today. I think the Willie Ribbs story is really one of the great sagas here. He came here 3 or 4 years ago, simply couldn't get up to speed, and admitted he just couldn't hold the car wide open around the corner. Now, there was speculation about how good that car was, but the point is his determination. He came back, he got a ride put together, and he is certainly willing to hold it down, but the car just keeps breaking.
He absolutely has enough talent to do the job here at Indy. He is one of the most extroverted people I have ever met, but he's very calm this month here. He's come here with a different attitude just to try and really hide from everybody and get the job done. Derek Walker, his team manager and team owner, who actually owns the car, told me last night, Derek, I'm out of business. That was when Buick came to the rescue, and I believe Kenny Bernstein, to give them this other engine, this other chance. And as Willie told you, he did 2:15, fast enough to be in the race here. So I really hope they can get their problem sorted out, because he deserves a fair chance, and I think he can qualify.
One of the big issues talked about here this month has been that of sponsorship. Where do you find the money to drive the cars? And Willie has expressed some disappointment that black business has not risen to his cause. They really have had to do this on a shoestring, and Derek just keeps whipping out the MasterCard or Visa or whatever and paying the bills. This has been a very expensive month for him. Do you think he'll get in? Just a gut feel. Are they going to make it or not?
It's so hard. I really wish the car was running now, because we speak so often about the conditions. They're ideal. He has the speed. He did a 4-lap run earlier today, did a 2:12, 2:13, 2:14, 2:15 right off the bat. Then they took it back, fueled it. That's when they got this misfire. So the most unfortunate things happen here to Willie T. But he has the speed. I just hope he has a tiny little bit of Irish luck to go with it.
We'll see the man for whom sponsorship is absolutely no problem as we return here for Hiro Matsushita's qualifying run. We'll be back right after this timeout. Back live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and on videotape earlier today, Hiro Matsushita went out for his qualifying run. Look at that front straightaway speed, 227 miles an hour. Very fast, 91 Lola. We talked about the fact that Grandpa founded Panasonic, so the sponsorship dollars are no problem. Point is, he's really gotten that car up to speed.
He really has. That 227, about 800 Buick horses pushing him along to do speed like that, which is really good, because on a regular basis, and we saw the graphic earlier on, all the top speeds on the straight and even in the North Chute today were done by Buick engines.
The rookies as a group have qualified well here as we watch Matsushita earlier today running into his final qualifying lap. As a group, they have qualified at an average of 218 miles an hour, and Hiro did his part to maintain that as he kept it up just over 218 for his average. But Groff and Jeff Andretti and Buddy Lazier with a scorching 218.6 just a little while ago have averaged as a group over 218. So I think that means there are a lot of good drivers up and coming who are capable of the challenge of running the kind of speed you have to run here.
People who have been watching us earlier this month might have heard us call him Matsushita. Now we're Matsushita. I heard on the radio this morning that he said, call me Matsushita, it doesn't matter to me. But his family objected. They said, that is not our name, Matsushita. So thank you, David. You are correct. I'm glad you're one of the few that pronounce it correctly.
Well, we appreciate the Irish explanation as well. Hiro basically said, hey, call me what you want, just don't call me late for dinner, or don't call me slow. I'm tired of hearing about that. And so at 218, he puts it in the field. That qualifying run will put him outside row 8. And an interesting story in contrast. We go from the wealthy, family-supported racing effort of this guy to a man who won this race. Tom Sneva, the school teacher who said, I'd rather drive race cars, and came to Indy and became a national hero, came back here this year without a ride and literally took it to the fences trying to get into the show in a 2-year-old car, a last-minute deal, the kind of deal you can be pretty afraid of in moments right like that.
And lapping in the 212, but just look at the road Sneva is using. I mean, he is Mr. Excitement here on a regular basis. But remember, he had approximately 25 minutes of practice time in this car before they stuck it in line and went out and qualified at that 213. But look how high he gets. coming out of the corners, out of the groove, out into the grey. That's a man using all the road that's available, and probably some of the road that he shouldn't even be using.
Won the pole 3 times here, won the race in 1983. Said he would not get into anything that didn't have a Chevy engine because he felt he couldn't win the race in anything that wasn't Chevy powered. Al Unser Sr. made the same comment. Al couldn't get a Chevy and walked. Sneva couldn't get a Chevy and said, well, you know, that 2-year-old or 3-year-old actually Buick powered Lola might not be such a bad deal after all. I'll take it.
And the brightest color schemes all month here are the Glidden cars of John Menard. And you remember Kogan and Gary Bettenhausen? Well, this is the third car, which is an 89 Lola, a backup car that Kogan and Bettenhausen could have used, but they're safely in the field. Therefore, Sneva got the call, and he put the overalls and a helmet on.
Team car to Gary Bettenhausen's fastest machine in the field, the car that ran 224 here last Sunday. The Menard team, there he is up against the fence again as Sneva puts the 3-year-old version of that car into the field. The other member of that team, of course, is Kevin Kogan, who is in row 6. Sneva at this juncture is the slowest man at 2:13, but I guarantee you it didn't feel slow as he horsed that thing around, and really a yeoman's effort. And again, when all was said and done, he kind of smiled and opened up for the reporters and said, well, when it comes right down to it, I really don't want to be stuck out on the golf course on Memorial Day or cutting the grass. I want to be here racing. I wonder if he still thought that right there at the exit
Whoa,
4.
right there at turn 4. We've seen the action down there all month. We saw Sneva. I'm not sure you could even have put the race program between the tires and the wall on that run.
He held on. 2:13.189 was the speed. Tom Sneva, the 1983 champion, came in, wiped a bit of sweat off his brow, and looked the camera in the eye and told us what it was like out there.
I've got to ask you right up front, were you exploring new racing lines out there?
Well, you know, we didn't get a whole lot of practice time, and the thing pushed a lot worse than we thought we would. But fortunately, we've been working with the John Deere lawnmower at the golf course, so I was prepared to run it in the grass, and we almost had to.
Well, the guys upstairs were commenting that it looked like for a second they could have put a plow on you and you could have made us some extra money.
Well, I think Darrell said he set it up for the pavement, but, you know, we had to drag a couple of the left side tires through the grass a couple times because it was understeer, and I had to roll out of the throttle, and, you know, they just wanted to stick it in, and I'm just glad they gave me about a half hour of their time so we could try to get in this race.
Realistically, the 89 Lola with the Buick power plant has not had a good history. How much extra can you find in 1 week?
Well, you know, I don't know. You know, it was sort of a last-minute thing, and they wanted to try to put it in, and it was either this or go back to the golf course and rake sand traps. So we decided to try this for another week, and we'll see what happens.
Tom Sneva, you can't help but wish him well as he tries to cross this start-finish line at the Brickyard and register one more finish. There are the 4 open spots still available. Sneva has taken his place down toward the lower end of that scoring pylon, but 4 spots are still open. We're going to talk about the whole issue of car technology here. We discussed the 3-year-old Lola for Sneva. Let's go down to the garage area and join Dr. Jerry Punch and a story about technology and engineering. Jerry?
Well, thank you, Dave. You know, one of the most coveted awards is given every year here at Indianapolis is the Louis Switzer Award, the award for engineering excellence. And a year ago, it was given to the Simpson Race Products Company. They developed the Beadall, the impact-absorbing helmet liner, and they were given that award for engineering excellence. In 1991, early in the week, the Louis Switzer Award for the 25th year was given to Don Halliday, who designed the 1991 Made in America True Sports chassis, the very first truly made in America chassis here of the modern 1990s era. And the reason this chassis is so unique, this is the car here that Scott Pruitt qualified in the field earlier today, is that they have removed all of the aluminum bulkheads inside the driver's foot compartment, therefore giving more room for the driver's legs and feet. And if there were to be an impact, and of course these side pods are impact absorbing, the driver's feet would not be bouncing off the bulkheads and aluminum and some of the other carbon fiber sheaths in there, causing some significant damage. And they did a lot of research on this car, and certainly a lot of people here, including the engineers who voted on the Louis Switzer Award, thought this was one of the most innovative chassis they've seen in a long, long time. So again, kudos to Steve Horn, Don Halliday, and all the True Sports team on coming up with a tremendous accomplishment here in the 1991 True Sports chassis. Dave?
All right, thank you very much, Jerry, and we wish them continued success with that car. We hope they can get it shaken down, and that brings to mind the whole question of these cars and how fast they are and how safe they are. And in this month of time here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, we formed an opinion or two about that. Here's a guy, Jim Crawford, who knows what it's like to smack that wall and walk away from it, or in one case to limp away from it. This shot is live. Crawford is out working on the racetrack, and I'm going to give you some more thoughts, my impressions of this whole business of IndyCar safety as we continue our live coverage from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Are here, symbol of 75 years of history. Over there, Gasoline Alley, the favored haunt of legendary car builders and mechanics. And as far as the eye can see, those massive grandstands, tribute to the popularity of the world's greatest race. Most importantly, this is where the checkered flag falls, and thus through each new generation, the dreams of would-be Indy winners focus on the start-finish line. The dreams are all right here, but the reality, the moment of truth for those who actually drive these cars, is out there in the corners. The corners at Indy are breathtakingly sharp when approached at today's straightaway speeds, just over 230 miles an hour. They are taken flat out, no lifting. That moment of truth comes when you turn the wheel in, when you enter that corner at a speed far beyond your ability to control the car should something go wrong. Compare that with superspeedway stock car racing. Here too, the corners are taken flat out, but they are not nearly so sharp. They're taken at less than 200 miles an hour. Steep banking encourages the car to turn. In such conditions, a great driver actually has some chance of saving an out-of-shape race car. There is no such hope here at Indy, where aerodynamic downforce makes the car a rock on a string. Break the string, lose grip, and the car will always go straight into the wall. Driver error, mechanical failure, makes no difference. Lose an Indy car in the turn, and you're in for a hard hit. But that's where the rock on a string analogy ends. If you bounce a rock off that wall, it'll bounce back still looking like a rock with a paint scuff on one side. Hurl an Indy car into the wall and the bolt-on parts collapse, explode, are ripped away, or ground to dust. If those parts absorb enough of the incredible force of impact, the driver can climb out and walk away. If those parts cannot take all the blows, if, as was the case with rookie Mark Dismore last week, the impacts are simply too many and too hard, the driver faces months of surgery and rehabilitation. But to the credit of those who write the rules and build the cars, only one driver has died at this speedway in 18 years. Compare that with 31 deaths in the previous 57 years, and we have reason to be proud of modern-day IndyCar safety. But I think it's time for one more big safety push, one that could make this form of racing as safe as stock car racing. When these cars crash, the driver's feet and legs too often take the brunt of the punishment. A.J. Foyt's second fastest qualifying run last Saturday is heroic because his legs were so badly injured only months before. Let's hope A.J.'s heroism is a consolation through the pain he'll endure for the rest of his life. Foyt starts alongside Rick Mears. His feet were mangled in Canada a few years back. Another hero, another limp. And a few rows behind them, Jim Crawford, who walks with the all-too-characteristic gait of the IndyCar racer. And Scott Pruitt joins Foyt as another back-from-leg injuries hero. To find the weak spot in this car in terms of safety, one need only review the x-rays of the drivers. That weak spot is up here in the nose, the footbox area. And I'd like to see that part of the car redesigned by a panel of engineers who have no stake in how fast this thing will run. Their goal would be to double the crashworthiness of this part of the car. And their success would be mimicked by those who want to build Indy cars, be it Lola or Penske or True Sports. If this design works, they'd all have to incorporate it next year. Now, those who do design these cars for speed will have some problems with that because the frontal area is going to increase. This new nose is probably going to be wider and taller and perhaps longer, putting more car between the wall and the driver's feet. The thing may slow down. What, from 225 to 220? I don't think that'd be a disaster. I'm not naive enough to believe that we can take all the danger out of driving that kind of speed, but I think we should remove all the danger that we can, and I believe these cars can be made safer. I also think the drivers deserve that. I'd like to see the IndyCar star of the future be able to come to this hallowed ground and live his dream and walk away without the limp. We'll be back with more from Indianapolis Motor Speedway right after this. Time Trials is being brought to you by Levi's 505 and 540 jeans for men. By Kawasaki. If it isn't a Kawasaki, it isn't jet ski. And by Budweiser, the king of beers with that clean, crisp, cold taste. Nothing beats a Bud. ESPN live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Dave Despain with Derek Daly in an area of expertise in which I guess he probably would just as soon not talk about, but let's talk about injuries. You have, if memory serves, 18 screws, 4 plates, and a rod in your hardware collection at home that came out of your leg. Am I naive? Can we not make that footbox safer?
No, you're not naive. In fact, you brought up a lot of very good points. To go back a little bit, when Indy cars went to ground effects and the tunnels that we're now very familiar with, they needed more weight on the front wheels. They pushed the driver forward, right out. He's first at the scene of the accident, unfortunately now, and his feet stick right out there. But when drivers get injured, they say, let's talk about safety. But you know, the problem with talking about safety, they said, okay, for next year we'll add 2 inches here and we'll add a little 3-inch piece here. They creep up on it. I think you brought up a great point, Dave. Why don't we challenge engineers to double the strength and the crashability of these cars? Let's not creep up on it. Don't go an inch at a time or a little bit at a time. Take a big chunk and change the cars. And you're right, the engineers are paid to make these cars go fast. They won't drop off a huge amount of speed, but they will make it safer. And I'm all for driver safety. I'd much rather see it less possible to have foot injuries when you hit on a super speedway.
Do you hurt? Do your legs still hurt from that crash?
Well, I mean, I have constant reminders every day, but I mean, I always look at my injuries as probably a much smaller problem than most people have in their lives.
Well, it's part of the business. It's a part we'd certainly like to minimize, and we're glad that you're able to get rid of most of that limp when you join us here on ESPN. We'll take a quick look at those still hoping to qualify for the Indy 500. Will they get out today? Parsons, Carter, Ribbs, Prappas has already crashed today. Guido Dacco, those are the men we expect to see when we come back live at Indianapolis. Here at the Indianapolis 500, this is the Dodge Stealth. The Dodge Viper, I think, will actually be at the head of the field, and that's a story in its own right and a controversy in its own right from this 75th running. But the interesting thing to me is the man who has had such a hand in building Dodge's performance cars in the last few years. His name is Carroll Shelby. I think we're going to get the opportunity perhaps later today to hear from him. He's quite a success story in his own right as he battles back from heart transplant. Pretty looking car. And my co-pilot here today, Derek Daly, got to drive that Viper. We'll get his impressions a little later. Right now, we want to go back down trackside and pick up on the action. We'll join Dr. Jerry Punch, and I believe he is with one of the owners here.
Well, Dave, you know, all month long, there's a search for speed, the search for the chassis. This is the right setting here, but one of the most important searches we have all month long is the search for food at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And you may ask, well, where's the best place to eat? How about the suites here around the turns, a very plush setting there? How about some of the infield concession stands? Well, they're all great. But if you want the great food, probably the best food here in the garage, come to C20. That's where Jonathan Bird's cafeteria is set up. And what a spread here. This is after a whole day of crew and family and friends coming by to eating. It's still all here. Now, they say you can tell something about a restaurant by looking at the chef. Never trust a skinny chef. Well, let me show you what Jonathan Bird looks like here. Now, you can trust this guy. Come on in here, Tiny. How you doing, Jonathan? Now, this spread here, what effect does this have on the crew? I mean, does it slow them down at all?
Well, we like to say we're the best fed crew at the track, and it's worked pretty well so far because we've got 2 cars in the show, so we must be keeping them contented.
Now, you had a car qualify on the first day, Stan Fox, and today, Buddy Lazier.
He qualified on the second day, Stan did. And then today, Buddy Lazier. We were searching for speed this morning and didn't quite have enough, decided to take a break for lunch. And as soon as Buddy had lunch, he was able to go about a couple mile an hour faster, and we're in a 2:18 fast time of the day.
That could be a secret now. Lunch at Jonathan Bird, you pick up about 3 miles an hour. Let's bring in the other co-owner here, Ron Hemmelgarn. And Ron, come on. Ron's the smaller one of the bunch here. Ron, now the third driver in this group is Gordon Johncock. Now, the word was he might qualify today, but you pulled him out. Why?
Well, we're going to put another motor in. That one's starting to go a little sour, so we're putting a new motor in, and hopefully we'll have him going for tomorrow.
So John Cock will try to qualify tomorrow. And the rumor also that you may be expanding your racing efforts to not only to Indy cars, but somewhere down south. Tell us about that.
Well, I've been very interested in NASCAR, and I've been going down there quite a bit and just sort of walking around and watching. And I'd like to hook up with a real good NASCAR team that's well established, that's sort of a front runner, and I'd like to get involved as an owner and branch off into NASCAR.
Well, these guys are going to have 3 cars in the field, probably here for the Indy 500, and certainly, no doubt, the best-fed crew and about to be the best-fed announcer in the business. I'll be back in a little while, guys. Talk to you later.
Okay, Doc. Hemmelgarn's going to get a lot of mail from down south. Folks would love to buy into that deal, and I think Bird's been eating at his own business here for most of his life. Check this out. Qualifying for the Winston, speaking of stock cars, Davey Allison grabs the pole at Charlotte Motor Speedway, 133 miles an hour ahead of Talladega winner Harry Gant. Darrell Waltrip on the inside of row 2 with his old nemesis Dale Earnhardt alongside, and Tommy Ellis comes up with 5th starting spot. We'll be back more with live coverage of time trials at Indy. We're back live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the 3rd day of qualifying for this great spectacle. 4 qualifying spots are still available. As we take a look at the Dodge Viper, earlier we saw the Stealth, scheduled to be the pace car for this race. The United Auto Workers said that thing was made in Japan. We don't want it at the head of the field for this great race. And so the Viper, has substituted for that car. Look here, the Irish kid hanging out with an American racing legend, Carroll Shelby, begging for the opportunity to go for a ride in that car that Carroll designed and built, and which will now in fact face the race. He's a happy camper. They're off to go for a ride in a very, very impressive car, and we took the opportunity to hear from Carroll Shelby, back from his recent heart transplant, still smiling.
We wanted a car that was fun to drive, and I really think they've done it. It's not one of these things that'll run 250 miles an hour. I don't believe in that. In America, it's a little different. I always built the Cobra not to see how fast it would go. How fast will it go from 0 to 100 to 0? That to me is a fun sport car, and it'll do it in about 12 seconds, and that's our goal here for this car.
Let's go back to the early 60s when the magical Cobra name became known. Tell me how that car was conceived and how it developed, that project.
When I quit driving in '60, I found out that Ford was building a new little engine. If I read in the paper that AC Cars had lost their Bristol engine deal, so I went to AC Cars and said, if you'll build me a chassis, I have an engine. I didn't have any money, but Ford didn't know that, and AC Cars didn't know that. I went to Lee Iacocca at Ford and said, if you'll loan me $25,000, I'll build you a car that'll blow the Corvette off. That's all it'll cost you. And he told Don Fry, his second in command, he was just sales manager, the Ford division at that time. He says, get that guy out of here before he bites somebody, but give him the $25,000. So that's where the first 2 Cobras came from. And we built them, and first thing you know, we were blowing off the Corvettes.
Tell me a little bit about the Ford GT40 program. When Ford brought you in to run it, the Mark IVs really at Le Mans, that was one of the true racing success stories from America.
Well, we won in '66 with the Mark II, and then we got into the Mark IV the next year. There's some bitter memories in the Mark IV. We made a lot of mistakes in the development of the chassis. Ford got into it very heavily then, and without Ford, we couldn't have won. But when you get 3,000 engineers on a project, a lot of times they get in each other's way, and we lost Ken Miles, who was such a fine, not only a fine person, but he was a great test driver, a great race driver, probably as good a long-distance driver as there ever been, and that's a hard thing to say. My friend Phil Hill, Jackie Ickx, there's been so many great long-distance drivers over the years, but we lost him through a stupid mistake. But then we took the old pushrod 427 Ford engine, and they did things that had never been done before. We'd build that engine, put it on the dynamometer with a gearbox, and run 6 24-hour races. Put the tape on it and run 6 24-hour races with nothing happening to the engine. So we knew we were locked in. If the driver didn't do something stupid, we could go win the race. So it was a great time in my life to go and win a race in '66 and '67.
Tell me about the chili business.
Oh, that was a fluke. That's another Shelby fluke. I had 200,000 acres of rocks down in West Texas that I'd bought. I thought it was a bargain, and I'm always getting my tail in a crack financially. I'm doing something I don't have any business doing. So I needed to sell it, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I went to a friend of mine who was in the PR business in Dallas. I used to know him at Ford, Tom Tierney. I said, hey, I got to get rid of these rocks down there in West Texas. He says, what do you think we ought to do? He said, give me 2 weeks. He comes back and he says, we're going to have the first World's Championship chili cook-off. Now we have, I own the International Chili Society, which we put on about 1,000, 1,200 cook-offs a year all over the world. And we bring the winners of all 50 states and about 25 countries to Tropico Gold Mine in California and give the winner $25,000. It's kind of an adult Woodstock. You know, they just come out there and leave the kids at home and get blasted for a couple of days. We're raising about $10, $12 million a year for charity. And that's something I'm pretty proud of.
You've had a lot of heart problems. How bad was that? How bad did it get? And tell me a little bit about the transplant.
Well, I had it for 30 years, Derek. Hereditary thing. I learned to live with it pretty well. I went through 2 bypass surgeries in '73 and '78. It finally got so bad in about '86 that I have to sleep sitting up in bed with my lungs filling up, and I was told that I'd have to have a transplant if I was to survive, and it got so bad I had to be helped to the bathroom, had to be practically fed, sticking with tubes in and out of me all over. And I had to wait 9 months, but I got one. This is May of '91. I got it in June of '90. I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
Of all your major accomplishments, and the list is very long, what are you most proud of?
The main thing that I'm proud of is very simple. I have 3 children that are successes in life. They're good citizens. They have ethical standards. They try to live life as it should be. They've been very fortunate to be successful in life, and they did it all while I was off running around the world. I'd take them with me when I'd live in Europe, you know, for months at a time. But I see other people that have been much better parents than I've been, and be so unfortunate to have their children that don't turn out the way mine have, and I thank God every day how lucky I can be to have a bunch of good children and grandchildren.
If you could pick a title for a book that details a lot of the colorful situations in your life and what you've been through in your life, what would the title of that book be?
Don't ever give up. Perseverance is the most important thing in life. Believe in what you want to do and go do that, and don't let anybody sidetrack you.
That is a delightful human being, and I'm a little jealous. That must have been a fun story to do.
That is talking to a legend, which is the first time I'd ever met Carroll Shelby, but in a very short time, that man becomes your friend, which is really is an amazing part of a personality magnet that he has.
You know, I never quite got to the bottom of that story. Did he get rid of those 200,000 acres of rocks or not? Did he keep them for the chili cook-off?
I don't know where that fit into the chili story, but someday ask me about the 26,000 chickens that died on his farm.
I don't know if we want to know about that. There is a great story about him blowing off the Ferraris. Well, maybe we'll have time to do that tomorrow. We're going to come back with more live from Indy. You haven't missed a thing. We'll be right back. Eastern Time, 6 Central, then Sports Center comes your way. Speed Week, we'll have some interesting news about what the president of Indianapolis Motor Speedway thinks the future of this sport should be. I'm going to jump on an airplane and try to get to Winchester, Indiana for Saturday Night Thunder. Rocking and rolling around that little half mile. That is going to be wild. 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central for Saturday Night Thunder with the sprints and midgets. It's all part of the big festival of speed at Indianapolis during the month of May. Rick Mears with his record 6th pole. A.J. Foyt winning the hearts of 250,000 fans here last Saturday with his run to the middle of row 1. And Mario Andretti scheduled to start outside row 1, a man who's only won this race once in 25 tries. Row 2 will have Bobby Rahal, Michael Andretti, Mario's son, who many feel is destined for world championship greatness, and Michael's second-generation rival, Al Unser Jr., right alongside. Winner may come from that row. John Andretti, Jim Crawford, and Danny Sullivan make up row 3. 3 interesting drivers, a former winner in Sullivan, a longtime aspirant in Crawford. And back in row 4, we find Eddie Cheever, who struggled in the heat last Saturday and finally settled for a 2:18. Jeff Andretti, Mario's youngest in the middle, and Scott Goodyear rounding out row 4, another of the promising young stars. Gary Bettenhausen, 30 years to the day after his father died here, running 2:24 last Sunday, the fastest man in the field thus far, with Lyondike and Fittipaldi, the last 2 men to win the 500. In row 6, Kevin Kogan, disappointed the weather got him too, and that Buick engine that had run 2:26 qualified at 2:22. Stan Fox, sort of the last of the old guard, the midget and sprint car drivers coming to Indy, and Mike Groff, another rookie at 2:19, keeping that high rookie average speed. Scott Brayton will be inside row 7 for the 75th running of this race. The Bettenhausen family tradition continuing in the middle of row 7. And Bernard Jourdain in an A.J. Foyt prepared car takes the outside of row 7. In row 8, last Sunday's final qualifier, Jeff Brabham. Will 2:14 be safe tomorrow on bump day? Looks like it probably will. Buddy Lazier scorched it today at 2:18 with a great run, and Hiro Matsushita got up to 2:18 as well, rounding out row 8. Today's qualifiers include John Paul Jr., Taro Palmroth, and Scott Pruitt with about a 3.5 mile-an-hour speed range. Roberto Guerrero and Tom Sneva are the last 2 men to have qualified here thus far, and those 4 spots are still open for the greatest spectacle in racing. We'll be right back.
Many of the cars in the early 500s were merely stripped-down passenger cars. While there were some specialized racing cars, take a look at the Lozier Ralph Mulford drove in 1911. He has his riding mechanic with him here, but he actually drove the car down from Detroit with his wife in the riding mechanic's seat. It's virtually a standard Lozier. By comparison, here's one in road-going trim. The radiator and the engine cover are exactly the same. Now, how did this car do in 1911? Well, Ralph Mulford drove it to 2nd and then drove it back to Detroit.
Donald Davidson, USAC historian. Great story from the checkered history of this great race. That'd be fun today. We could turn this into the world's greatest rent car derby here at Indianapolis for the month of May. Right now we watch the cars running around live here at the racetrack, and this is just practice. No qualifying attempts expected. John Paul Jr. is the man we're watching, and he is already in the field. He qualified early today inside row 9 at 217 miles per hour. This is a live shot of him practicing. What does it feel like to go around this place? 217 miles an hour. Well, Marty Reed hooked up with Scott Pruitt, and they simulated that experience.
There is a bit of Walter Mitty inside every race fan, and Budweiser has developed a racing simulator that exposes fans to 5 different forms of racing, and the sensation is real. Just ask Kara Ashley and Brian Luther.
I about got sick, but I don't know. It's fun.
What about you, Brian? Well, it was definitely different. It made it, makes you think that if that's really how bumpy it is in the car, and how hard it is to see things when they're going that fast, it makes it different because, when you're little, you always think, that's what I like to do. And then this gives you a chance to see what it's really like, and you think, well, I don't know, maybe you want to second think it, get different thoughts about it.
Of course, the hardest thing to experience when you're sitting in your chair at home is the sensation of motion. But let's try an experiment. Take a ride through my eyes.
Marty, how you doing? Want to go for a ride?
The simulator costs $250,000 to build, and up to 900 people a day can experience the thrill of IndyCar racing, NASCAR, drag racing, hydroplanes, and microjets. You actually feel every bump and experience the sensation of G-forces without the danger of spinning out by going too fast. Four and a half minutes later, the simulation ends and it's back to reality.
Marty, are you okay? You don't look so good. Maybe you better stick to pit lane.
All right. Marty gets all the good gigs. We're watching the live shot from Indianapolis as the practice continues. No qualifying runs looming on the immediate horizon. We'll be back to update you on happy hour, if there's going to be a happy hour here today at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, right after this. At the defending champion in the Indy 500 becomes a coach. That crew alongside the guys hoping to help Didier Taze into this field. Ari Leyendyk, as he mentioned earlier in that interview, has been coaching Didier, and Didier is on the racetrack now, and I believe it may be a looming qualifying attempt. We're going to try to find out more about that story now. Here is the car coming down the backstretch, and this is a live shot, and he is obviously not at speed at the moment. Let's find out from Marty Reed what's going on. Marty?
Well, guys, they put on sticker tires, so it was going to be a simulation of a 4-lap run, but we saw the signboard go up at 2:06.4, which was actually slower than the old tires that they had on the car. They got up to only 2:09 there, so they are doing some serious contemplation. As you can see, they're coming back across the wall, which means Didier will be coming in, and I better move quickly because I'm about to get run over. Let's go back to Pancho Carter with Jerry.
Well, playing the waiting game, Marty, is Pancho Carter, the 1985 Indy 500 pole sitter. It was a Buick back then, and it's a Buick today. But, Pancho, you guys have struggled. They have worked so hard to get this car up to just practice trim. Now, tell us that, I guess Mark Dismore was going to qualify last week. We all know what happened to him. This car was sitting somewhere in a garage just 4 or 5 days ago, and the crew have been hustling to get it put together.
Yeah, they have. The Arciero Racing team here has done an excellent job. They didn't get this car picked up from Bettenhausen Motorsports till Monday night, so they worked real hard, had it out here Thursday, and we missed getting on the track Thursday due to the weather, but we got it on yesterday, and it's just taken us a little longer than we'd like to get it up to speed. We're able to get up to about 210, and we feel the car is capable of a lot more, but we just haven't been able to make that venture on past the 210 barrier.
Now, where do we stand now? I see they've changed springs behind me, and they're hustling to get this car ready. Will you make an attempt before 6 o'clock?
We'll go back out and practice and see if the car goes any quicker. If it does, then there's a possibility of making an attempt, but probably just going to go, see if this direction with the spring change is going to make the car any quicker, and if it is, and we run out of time, then we'll be ready for tomorrow.
What about a cutoff speed? What would you accept and maybe make a last-minute bonsai run? 212, 213?
We haven't even discussed it yet, but, the later it gets, the speed will come down, I'm sure.
Good luck to you, Pancho.
Thank you.
Pancho Carter standing here in the garage area playing the waiting game, hoping to get this car qualified for the 75th Indy 500. Dave?
And that is Didier Taze pulling back out onto the racetrack, and you had a thought on Pancho Carter's situation.
Pancho Carter was taking a big gamble. He started the month of May in the leader car, didn't get enough speed out of it, 208, 209, jumped out of the car, said, I'm leaving, went off to Arciero. Johnny Parsons jumped in and immediately went 210, 212. So Carter may have taken a very, very risky gamble here.
You take your chances, and then you do the best with what you can when you get down to the scary time, which is right now, countdown to the end of qualifying. 10 drivers have tried today. 7 have actually qualified. Parsons, Dobson, and Lewis have all waved off. 4 spots are still available, and if anybody's going to make a run here this afternoon, they better make it soon. Willie Ribbs is out right now to practice. We'll be right back. Right back out to the racetrack to try to regain the speed that would get him into this field with the coaching of Arie Luyendyk. And right now it remains to be seen whether he can get a qualifying attempt in before this afternoon is out. The time is beginning to run short. The car must be in line in order to make a qualifying attempt. It must then run 2 warm-up laps and 4 hot laps for time. Day 3 cars go into the field behind the day 1 and 2 qualifiers. But my question at this point, Derek, what happens if time runs out today? We've seen the guys that are struggling. We know who doesn't have a qualifying attempt to make. What happens if those 4 spots are still available at 6 o'clock today and it rains all day tomorrow? Then what do we do?
From what I know, the USAC must give you 1 attempt. Everybody had that last week. It went through the line 1 time. If the hypothetical situation happened, it rained all day tomorrow, they'll fill the field with the next 4 cars in line tonight when it closes at 6 o'clock.
So that being the case, there may indeed be some happy hour activity. Looky here. Everybody's read the rule book, and they all want to be in line. Whether or not they will run is very much a question. The yellow car is Ribbs. We've documented his story pretty well. Parsons sitting at the head of the field there, obviously more concerned about that than the possibility of getting up to Winchester to run the Sprinter Midget tonight. But again, perhaps you can qualify for this race by sitting there on pit road. And I guess that speaks to the fact that we really didn't have as many cars here and as many car and driver combinations as we would like and as we've had in the past.
This is the little game they play now. There's no drivers in sight here, but the cars are in line for exactly the reason we just mentioned. Here's the Hemmelgarn car. It's also in line. This is Gordy Johncock's car. Not up to speed today, but if anything happens with the weather tomorrow, they need to be in line. These cars would qualify because I believe that's the first 3 in line. These cars would get in the race. There's Salt Walters' car. We saw him have a fire yesterday. Really has struggled to get above 200 miles an hour, and really the odds of him making it on sheer speed are very slim.
We are discussing, of course, the hypothetical situation, the what if it rained all day tomorrow. In reality, we would anticipate that there will be a full day of qualifying tomorrow to fill those spots, and we'll be here to cover it for you. We're going to get more on the Didier Tays story right now. Let's go to Marty and find out what's happening there.
Well, guys, you can see they are hooking up the car to drag it back. Now, as you know, there is no refueling out here in pit lane, and they are in a hurry to get back out here before the 6 o'clock hour, because I think they are going to make a run. We can't even talk to the crew members because they're going to get going so quickly, and they're dragging them off right now.
That is a team that is certainly not thinking about hurrying to get in line. They are thinking about getting onto the racetrack. To do that, they must be in line. They must call for a qualifying attempt. At that moment, the USAC officials will close the track for practice, and they will open the track for Didier Tays to go out and run. They put on the fresh tires. It didn't seem to help. Apparently, they think they've found something. They seem to want to run.
They did get a little bit of speed out of those new tires, but when a driver stays in a car like this and they tow it back for fuel, it's a sure sign they're in a hurry to get the job done. But there are precious minutes left for him to get this car fueled up. Now, they just need enough fuel to make the run. They might stick another set of tires on, and Didier Tays looks as if he wants to make a qualification run today before and not wait till tomorrow.
The clock is winding down on that effort. The race is on to the gas pump. We'll be back to see if he can make that run before the cutoff time after we take this time out from Indy.
Here at the Indianapolis, as the Euro Motorsports racing team is trying to make the decision of whether or not to go or no go today with Didier Tays. They're talking about how he's getting good straight line speed of about 217, 218, but they feel like he's being forced to lift because the car's pushing so much going through the corners. Now, I wanted to try and get a word in with Arie real quick, but it doesn't look like we're going to be able to. Dave, I'll get back to you if we can.
Luyendyk, of course, is a coach here, a friend of Didier, and he firmly in the field in the middle of row 5, last year's winner, willing to step forth and try to help out a buddy. How much can the veterans help those coming up? Willie Ribbs talked about the opportunity to talk to Rick Mears and joked that next time he went out, he went 5 miles an hour faster. A, how much can you learn? And B, how much are the old guys willing to tell you?
Well, the problem is the old guys do tell you a lot here. This is such a dangerous place. They try and help people because they don't want them in that dangerous situation. But Arie is a good friend of Didier. They both live out in Phoenix. They with each other on a very regular basis. And I think it's just a nice little confidence builder when you see your friends, as influential as Arie would be, come down and stand by your side and say, hey, you know, we're all here with you. You go out and try, and whatever happens, happens.
Ari cannot get in the car for him, of course, and cannot solve that push. The word from down trackside is that they are going to make a serious effort to try to qualify in what looks about 10 minutes remaining in this session.
Now, one of the problems they're going to have, they're back fueling. We saw Didier stay in the car. They are back getting enough fuel, but they have to go through the USAC tech inspection again. Every time a car comes out of line, when it's represented for qualifying, the USAC officials must measure everything. And here's the tech inspection area here. They're waiting for him to come down, but that takes a lot of time to go through the measurements, which USAC must do. That's part of the regulations.
Now that, of course, will double as victory lane once we complete the full cycle here of Indy 500 month. The conclusion of this event is right there where the Borg Warner Trophy will be presented. Today's activities got underway with the crash by Ted Prappas. Let's see if we can get an update there. Preliminary indications were that he was doing fine. Anything new on that, Dr. Jerry Punch?
Well, Ted has been checked out in the infield care center, and what we gave earlier was indeed accurate. He sustained bruises to the heels of both feet. He has been released to drive, and hopefully if he can find another car, he may have a shot yet to get into this 75th Indy 500. So good news for Ted Prappas, and that pretty violent impact sustained only a few bruises to the lower feet.
All right. Thank you very much. That's good to hear. Prappas took a pretty good lick down there, but appears to be fine. And so our waning drama here is whether or not Didier Taze will be able to get back out onto the racetrack, get through tech inspection, and actually make a qualifying attempt here for one of the 4 remaining spots in the 75th running, the Diamond Jubilee Indy 500. We'll be back to see if it happens right after this. Day 3 of Indy 500 time trials has been brought to you by Dodge, the official cars and trucks of the 75th Indianapolis 500. By Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Yokohama Tires, advanced technology on wheels. Back live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Poncho Carter has just pulled out onto the racetrack, but that appears to be only for a practice run. The drama right now is being generated by the USAC officials, who apparently have told Didier Taze's crew that they can tech that car in 3 minutes, and they told him that at 6 minutes until 6 o'clock. And tell me again now, if he pulls off tech inspection, headed for the racetrack before 6, then he's okay.
Before that magical gun goes off, he can take as much time on his warm-up laps as he likes, but as long as he leaves and pulls away, even when he's in the pit lane, if the gun has not gone off, he's allowed to take his run. Now, USAC have said they can do this in 3 minutes. I'll be impressed if they do, because they do have to measure the car underneath as well as check the pop-off valve on top, which is what they were doing when we just looked at those pictures.
All right, we will see if he is able to pull this off or not. Taze waiting. Okay, not Rick Mears, not A.J. Foyt, not Mario Andretti, but I guarantee you his desire to get into the race is every bit as strong as those top 3 last week. Let's see if we can eavesdrop, find out what's going on here. Marty?
Well, they're working on the pop-off valve on the car itself. Didier has climbed out of the cockpit and is going over last-minute instructions. Although, guys, I got to tell you, by my watch, it looks like they are going to have a very difficult time making this 3-minute plan. Here goes the car as they are ready to push it forward and get it into line. And the clock is running, and they're making one final adjustment, and this could be very costly to them.
Now, Marty, is that car officially in the tech inspection? Has the 3-minute clock begun? Obviously, there is no such official clock. USAC gave them that estimate. Is the official inspection underway yet?
No, not yet, until they pull down onto the scales, the qualifier, what they call it. It's a machine which actually lifts the car so that they can make all the exact measurements that they have to. So what they have to do is put that on there, and that's when the clock runs.
I think the chances that he will make it today are somewhere between slim and none. If he makes it, we'll certainly show it to you tomorrow when we come back for a full 2-hour coverage of the final day. And I suspect tomorrow is going to be a pretty interesting day, assuming that it doesn't rain, because all of this waiting and gambling and strategizing goes out the window. You have no choice tomorrow, Derek. You go out, put it on the line, run the fastest you can run, and hope you can bump somebody out.
That's right. Didier, in final discussions with his team manager and team owner Antonio Ferrari there, who is a family related to the great Ferrari.